So right now, I'd like to introduce two of the graduates from the Make Your Book a Reality Writing Retreat who have also published, written and published their books that I know they are extremely proud of. In fact, let me show them to you. We have Doug Davidson, who wrote Power from the Heart. He's got his poster on the wall behind him.
Yep.
Power from the Heart became an Amazon #1 international bestseller shortly after it was published. Just a fantastic job. And it's actually available not only in ebook and paperback and hardcover. Doug did an audiobook as well, if you're interested. And it's just a fascinating book. Doug can talk a little bit more about what his book is about and the process of writing it and give you any sort of insights or tips associated with that. Then we also have Bob Hendrickson. Bob Hendrickson wrote the book Crossing. Bob and I go way back. We were both KC-10 Air Force pilots back in the mid-'80s at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. And Bob and I reconnected once I started becoming a writing coach. Bob went to our retreats, and he also went through the one-on-one author coaching program, and he published his book this spring as well. His book was also quite successful in that it became the #1 new release in Air Force biographies on Amazon shortly after its publication. So both very successful, but apart from that, they both are just outstanding books written by two really great authors. And more important than all of that, they're just wonderful people. So I'm going to ask them to talk a little bit, and I'm going to start with Bob since he's off mute right now. So Bob, if you want to lead off the parade, that would be great. And then Doug, please follow up as well. And then after they're done talking, I'm going to open the floor to questions that any of you might have about anything that they have brought up. So,
All right,
Bob, you're up.
Everybody hear me all right? Thumbs up? All right, good, thanks. Well, I am sitting here in Durham, New Hampshire at the University of New Hampshire campus. That's where I'm living now, having just changed my situation, and I'm living on my own and building out my camper. I'm going to go take my my Sprinter and go cross country here in about a month. I just put my heater in today, and the Max Air fan is sitting on the bed over there waiting to go. I'm having all kinds of fun with that, but couldn't have done any of this if it hadn't been for Bruce and hooking up with him like I did about a year and a half ago. We reconnected when I found out that he was putting on this course. I thought, what the heck is what is that? And I thought about, I've always wanted to write a book because I knew that people had been walking up to me all my life and saying, it's not so much what you do or what you've done. You've done some pretty normal things, but so many things in one life. How can you do all of those things? I've been to every place in the world, I think, twice or 3 times. Let's say I've worked in, well, you have to read the book, I guess, to get the whole list, but there's just a lot of things anywhere from flying with Bruce in one of the largest airplanes in the inventory and winning a couple of competitions and that were SAC wide, Air Force wide, and went off to the airlines, flew for TWA and American Airlines, and TWA to business. And then for last 15 years, I was an accident investigator at headquarters FAA, in Washington, D.C. So all the big ones over the last 15, 20 years that you've heard about, the San Francisco 787, the ones that disappeared over the Indian Ocean, all of those things, I was one that did those. Me and a guy named Tony James, who was my mentor. And, so I'm the guy you never saw, but who did all that stuff. So people were saying, you should write a book about that. So I tried. I kind of wiggled through some of my own personal stories, and Bruce got a hold of it and said, well, you should probably flesh this out over here. And what did that make you feel like? How'd you feel when you did that? Why did you do that? And he started asking questions like that. And I realized that there were some aspects of my writing that were interesting, but missed the point. And his guidance is just expertise. I can't, he's so subtle about it. I don't know how to tell you that, how to make you feel what he does for you and what he did for me. It really cuts the bone in quite a few places. It wasn't fun in lots of times, and there are a lot of tears in that book. Even though I'm a kind of rough, tough Air Force pilot, it took its toll. But in the end, I think it was a better book. It's not a self-help book. It's not a how-to. It's not the 7 deadly sins or the 7 things that you ought to do. It's more of a don't try this at home, folks, because if you do, the same things that might happen to you might happen to me. I've been very, very lucky to live through it, and I have, and some people less fortunate than me didn't. But the process of writing the book was just amazing because Bruce just sits in the back and just watches and listens, and he's so precise about the way he just hones in on something and says, maybe you ought to change this. And when you're done, you've written it all. He doesn't get in ghostwrite for you or do anything for you. If you read my book and you read Doug's book, completely different books. Doug's got a great book. He's just got, I really love this book. It's so positive, and there's so many things in it for you. And in my book, it's not so much that it's positive for you, but it's a fascinating story, I think. And so there are different books, and that's sort of the Bruce's talent. And I don't know what books you're going to have when you're done with this, but I can tell you that I want to see them and I want to read them because I know that they're going to be great. Because Bruce is going to help you, and he's really good at this. And I think Doug will tell you that too. Let me throw it over to Doug and let him finish up what I didn't say. You're lucky people and you're in a lucky place, and you're gonna have to work hard. It took me a year, so don't think you're gonna do it in the next month or two if you want a real book. But a year is pretty quick, I understand. Came out, did okay, but not about the money. It's about your pride in authorship and getting your story told. And if you want to do it, Bruce can help you. He's a good guy at it. So good luck. And if you wanted to ask me questions about my book, if you want to buy it, I think Bruce could probably tell you where to go on Amazon to find it. And if you want to buy Doug's, just look around because it's in all the stores, I think. Isn't it, Doug? Go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to acknowledge Bob for an excellent book. I've read it as well, and it's totally different than mine, as he said, but it's definitely worth the time to read and gave me a whole new insight on pilots. So it's what you do is amazing. Every day I take some time to think about what I'm grateful for. And I want to acknowledge Bruce. I know Bob has as well, but without having Bruce, my book would not be published, period. End of story, much less a bestseller. And he came along just at the right time. A little over a year ago, I woke up at 3:33 in the morning, and the title of the book came to me, Power from the Heart, a collection of inspiring stories and insights that will ignite your soul. And it just I don't know where it came from, but it did. And I immediately got up, turned on my computer and wrote it down or typed it in before I forgot it. And then I immediately came up with a really rough cover for the book, which I then put on my wall. And it's nowhere near what the cover is now, but it was something that made it real for me. And I met Bruce at his book launch, actually, of his best-selling book, which was a great experience to go to. And we connected, and I went and took his course, and the rest is history, as they say. I was thinking about some of the things, as Bob said, what Bruce did for me in the book. And, as you read my book, you'll find that I'm not a person who ever to sit down, if I have a goal, to plan out everything in advance and then decide, am I going to do this goal? And I think that that's how most people operate in life. And as a result, they never end up doing anything because all the things that need to get done to accomplish whatever that goal is seem bigger than what we're up for. I, on the other hand, say, this is what I want to do. I have no idea on the planet how I'm going to do it. And I just start. And I had no writing experience at all. But I said, I want to write a best-selling book. And in fact, Bruce will attest, and so will Bob, that as you see in the bottom of my screen, it has my name, Doug Davidson. Well, while I was in the course, I changed it to Doug Davidson, best-selling author. And I hadn't even written the book yet, right? Isn't that true, Bruce? And that just kind of planted that in my head. And I didn't know that there's such a thing as a professional cover designer. I was going to have my friend who's a graphic artist do it. I didn't know that there was such a thing as a copy editor and then a format editor. I didn't even know any of that stuff. I didn't know that you need to get a barcode for your book. I didn't know where to get that. You know, and I could go on, and the list of things that I had no idea when I started, but they all got done. And every step of the way, Bruce was there to guide me and say, okay, well, here's what's next. And it's always like, okay, what's next? What's next? Rather than looking at everything between here and the finish line and then getting overwhelmed. So that's, you know, you're on the first stage of your journey right now, and that's getting your thoughts on paper or on a computer, whatever the case might be. Then the next step is formatting and getting it edited and all of that stuff. And one of the best advice that Bruce gave me was, my book is more or less a memoir. It was originally written so that I could pass it on to my kids and give them all the life lessons that I wish I had when I was their age. And so I started off with the first story. I sent it to a couple of friends and they all went, wow, that's a great story. You should write a book. I say, yeah, well, that's what I'm doing. And now there's 22 stories in the book, and each one of them is some experience or incident in my life that was life altering. And then at the end of each chapter, I share what was the insight or lesson that I learned from that. So not only is it good, entertaining reading, but you can actually gain some knowledge that I've learned through trial and error and apply it in your own life. Whether you have anything in common with me at all, these are life lessons that can be applied in every aspect of life. And so as I started writing each chapter, it was all done like I was sharing a story. I'd start at the beginning and I'd go to the end. And one of the best bits of advice Bruce gave me was he would read the story and then he said, well, that paragraph in that, you know, maybe a third of the way through the story is the most compelling part. And he had me move that paragraph right to the very beginning of the chapter to grab somebody's attention. And then I'd weave it back in throughout the time. Otherwise, it would kind of be like ho-hum as you get started on the chapter. So that was huge advice for me. And one of the first chapter of my book is when I was younger in life and I needed a mentor. I was in the seminar business, and Tony Robbins, who is a household name and the #1 business coach on the planet, I wanted him to be my mentor. And to try and get through to Tony on the phone right now is just near impossible. And yet I was able to spend a full day with him and not be charged anything and have him as a mentor. So that was like the first chapter in my book. And there's other chapters about competing in the Ironman triathlon, becoming a professional golfer at age 44, starting a new business, getting divorced and going through that whole saga in my life, and then wrapping it up with purchasing this sanctuary that we have up in the top of Palomar Mountain, where James is right now sitting in the log cabin, you know, creating magic out of nowhere and not having any idea a little over a year ago when we bought it that we even wanted a second home. And here we are, we have 3 homes up here. So we have a second, third, and fourth home. And amazingly enough, just a little over a year we purchased it, we've now paid it off. So we have 22 acres on top of a mountain with 3 homes. And here is my sanctuary where I can continue to write and live the life that I want to live. It's pretty exciting. So thank you, Bruce, for guiding me along the way. Speaking engagements are starting to get booked now, and I'm excited about that and sharing my story. So that's about it for me. Open to answering any questions you have. Bob, you're on mute.
So Bob, go ahead and go off mute, and Doug and Bob and I will be on. I invite
you go.
others to
Yeah.
to chime in and ask questions. And I just want to emphasize, I know that at times guys can be pretty modest. I want to re-emphasize, I should say, that these are just two remarkable men. And they've written amazing books that are gripping, they're fascinating, they're very well written, and they're well written because they did it. It's their story. The writing in their books is their writing, and I just help to provide guidance
I wanted
at
to add,
times. What's that?
Bruce, I just wanted to add one thing and sort of
Sure.
to pile on with what Doug said. That right now you're in the sweet spot of writing your book, the fun part, where you get to write your story, and you get to craft the story. And
Bob, you just went mute, man.
okay, how's this?
There you go.
I
That's
can hear
it.
you now. Yeah. Go
So
ahead.
you're in the most. I don't know where I fell off, so I'll put it this way. To pile on what Doug already said, that right now you're in the most exciting part of this whole thing, the fun part, where you get to take your story and put it on your computer or your paper or whatever, craft it and then mold it into something that's a little different, maybe a little better, and just see it grow and grow to fruition and a final product. And it's lovely, it's fun, it's a great, interesting thing to do. Then you have to find out what barcode you need and who is Intertech and who is a Hulu number and what the, oh God, I mean the things that you need to know that nobody ever told you to publish. He's got all that, and man, that paid for itself and took the load off me. That really made it the fun, easy thing to write the book. I was like we were talking about yesterday. At 10 months in my process, I said to Bruce, I'm burning out, man. I've got to get this done. I want to finish. I had done the fun part, and I wanted to rush through the finish. And you can't rush the finish. We ran as fast as we could and got it done. And I had to go away and take some personal business for about a year. So anyway, it's everything he does. It's not just the fun part, the crafting, which is fun. Believe me, that's a great part of writing a book, and it's fun. But when you see the finished product, now what do you do? I've written 3 books, but this is the only one that's ever been published because Bruce was here. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you, Bruce. That's all I have to say. And I'll answer questions.
You're welcome. I'm going to open the floor to our authors, our wonderful authors here at the retreat. And if you guys have any questions about anything, and now is a great time to speak up, just come off a mute. And
why don't you start by telling us what you're writing about?
Yeah, great. In fact, that's a wonderful idea, Bob. I'm just going to go around and I'm going to identify the authors. And if you just tell us what you're writing about, who you are and what you're writing about, that would be great. And I'm going to start with Amber.
Right now, I am working actually on my dissertation, which is on creating performance across cultures and how we can foster intercultural dialogue. So I'm using the example of 2 artists who are also dancers and looking at how we can communicate across borders essentially and come together in a united way, which is not purely conflictual, and removing those divisions which we can otherwise fall into through different narratives that we come across. So I've been finalizing that on this retreat, just because the deadline is imminent for that, and I've also been working on it quite a while, and it's been really complicated for me just to structure it. And afterwards I was telling Bruce I would like to write more of a kind of disguised memoir where I write about some of my experiences that I've had traveling and challenges with ADHD and feeling a little bit lost. So I'm going to be doing that on the next retreat. But for now it's been, my dissertation. So I'm inspired by you guys talking about the published result and the way you kept going. And I guess that's my main question. How did you structure your writing time, and what helped you to stay through to the finish line?
Doug, you want to go first, huh? Or you?
Sure.
I mean,
I put a date out there by when the book was going to be finished. And that inspired me to do something. It ended up that Bruce said, no, that's not realistic. And we pushed it back, but it was all it was a self-imposed date. And, during the year that I was writing my book, I was running a $1 million business. I'm renovating 3 homes that we just purchased. I mean, my life was extremely full, to say the least. But I would just carve out time, and I would come up to the cabin for 2 or 3 days at a time and just focus on that. And so that was it, getting rid of the distractions and doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was, first of all, let me ask you, if I may, Amber, are you describing that you're writing in your dissertation a fictionalized account of these 2 artists that are getting, you said orthodontists? Is that what you said, or artists that were getting together and working cross-culturally, or are you trying to tell
Oh no,
more?
I'm essentially analyzing what they've done as an approach for creating art across borders. So it's more of an analysis. And the original idea was that I would also produce my own work as part of it to show that example. I did not go around to doing that, largely because the writing ended up taking so long, but I would like to progress and do that as well. So writing a scenario, which again can be turned into a performance or a film. Yes, that's
interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, of course. I mean, I fascinating. I'd love to hear. I'd love to see more about that. As to just with Doug, I had a lot of things going on too. I just retired, and retiring from a job. This is all in the book about retiring and looking at your go bag. I had lived out of a suitcase for 45 years. Really, I mean,
Wow.
seriously, I'd be driving home on the freeway, phone would ring, and I'd get off at the next exit and turn around and go back to the airport and be gone to Djibouti or to Afghanistan or
Wow.
South Pole, or the top of a mountain someplace. And I had to have the clothes around my back, and this is my FAA shirt, So whatever. That talk about being inoculated for worldwide everything, for anything, anytime, for 45 years. And one day they called me up and said, "You're done. It's not the end of the world yet, but we can't send you out because you don't have enough time left to finish one." So I said, "Does that mean I get to unpack my go bag?" He says, "Yeah, go ahead." It took me about 10 minutes to unpack my go bag, but it was 10 minutes. It was just one of the most emotional things I've ever done in my life. That's the kind of, and it was following from that. My wife sort of changed her tack on things, and we wound up getting divorced. Just went final about 30 days ago. So all of that was just all towards the end of the book as well. So it really is important to set goals for yourself, and not just long-term goals, not just the big, I want it done by this date. And that's important. Doug, it worked. For me, it was weekly. I had to get this chapter done, and I had to get these chapters organized. And I set a goal for myself for this week. And I would do 3 chapters or 2 chapters or 1 chapter if I was rewriting. And that was my goal. Keep those goals sacrosanct and do your book, because you're paying yourself. It's like paying yourself, get yourself organized and do it for yourself, because nobody else is going to do it for you. That's what I would say about that.
So I just want to add something. Real quickly to these 2 guys. From my perspective as the coach, they're both busy. Doug described all the different things he's doing, and Bob, one thing he left out from his story is that he has been dealing very courageously with Parkinson's disease, and there's a whole lot associated with that, including some very invasive surgery that he's been going through and recovering from. And this is all going on during this book writing process. So they both had a lot to deal with. What I saw as the primary reason why they were able to start this and finish it was that they made a commitment and they made continuous progress. And both Bob and Doug opted for weekly meetings. with me, and that's an option. I'm part of the one-on-one coaching program. There's weekly meetings with whoever wants to meet with me, and they kept it up. Each week, I would typically get a new chapter or a revised chapter, or sometimes both. And whatever they gave me each week, I'd go through it, and then we'd meet we had a weekly set time for each of them. Bob
And he
was
never begged up. Bruce always did his part. He never begged off either. Yeah, he kept up his end.
True.
That's
Bob was on Monday afternoon, and Doug was first thing in the morning on Friday. I had Doug's, and that's how we got through it. That's how we made progress. That both of us, Doug and I, and then Bob and I, we had a commitment to each other, and he was going to provide me something, and I was going to review it, and I'd give him my best effort. And our meetings were only an hour, but I would spend several hours on each of their chapters, going through it and giving line by line feedback to them. So it was what I saw as their biggest reason for success was their commitment to the process and making steady progress. And then also, and I want to compliment the both of them very much so. And I have other authors in my program that are the same way. So I'm very grateful that this is the situation. But when I gave them feedback on things, they were receptive to suggestions I was making, and things that I brought up, aspects of the writing that I brought up that I thought would make their chapters or the entire structure of their book more impactful. And they thought about it, and they didn't take everything I said, because they had their own perspective on things, of course. And my goal was not to change their writing style, because they both have unique, very good writing styles. But I felt through organization and structure, and I particularly looked for areas that they kind of glossed over, that they needed to dig in deeper to really complete their book and insert emotional aspects associated with their writing and their stories. And they did it. And the end result is just two fantastic books. I really I can't say enough about how proud I am of both of them. And they should very, very much be proud of themselves, because they did an excellent job. So I'm going to move on to Cynthia right now.
Yeah.
And Cynthia, tell us who you are and what you're writing about.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Uka. I'm from Iowa. I'm writing a memoir entitled Marriage Made in Heaven. And it is a tribute to my late husband, Dr. Ferdinand Uka. And it's also a spiritual journey of navigating life without him. The story takes lots of twists and turns. He was from Nigeria. His dad, he was a prince as well. So his dad paid for him to, become educated in the United States. He opened up a transplant center in Mobile, Alabama. And ironically, his dad, once he opened up the center, was dying of kidney failure. They don't have transplants in Nigeria. They didn't have the equipment. So he found a way to buy all of the equipment, send it to Africa, and attempt to save his dad's life. In the midst of that, he gets murdered. And then I just go over the spiritual journey and how God has helped me to get through this over 25 years. So that's my story.
Wow,
Gee,
that's amazing.
In a nutshell.
that's a story.
I can't wait to read that one. That's going to be
It's
fast.
pretty wild. I can't even
Bruce?
believe it's my life, but
How much have you seen so far, Bruce? Sounds great.
I haven't seen any of it so far, but I'm really looking forward to it. Cynthia,
Yeah.
do you have any questions for either Bob or Doug?
you'd answered one major question in terms of the weekly coaching and how that works. I was kind of intrigued about the cover. I thought that was pretty interesting that they have, what did you mention about covers for books?
Cover designers, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
designers and things like that? Mhm.
Let me take this one, because I got a great story about this. I came up with what I thought was a great story book cover as well. And it's the pilot's halo. You look out the window of a pilot's of an airplane, you can see a round rainbow, because only pilots can see a round rainbow, because you look down and see it. It's all about angles from the sun, So they always call it the pilot's halo, because it's always around your part of the shadow. And it's fascinating to see one, because you never do. And I have this beautiful picture of one. And I sent it off and everyone, oh, well, that's kind of ho-hum. And they put me in touch with this woman in England whose name is Sheree Foxley or Foxley.
Foxley, yeah.
And she did both of our things, but she always, I said, I've never spoken to her. She closes every email with, we'll talk soon. And I've never spoken to her in my life. We changed emails back and forth for like 6 or 8 months. And she gave me this, well, I'm thinking of a guy, he's looking at all these airplanes going by. And I said, well, that sounds crazy. And went back and forth, and she took my inputs and I took her inputs, and man, she hit me with the cover, and I like to just fell out. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And if you've seen the cover, it's just mind boggling. I mean, I'm looking at it thinking of walking through an airport and say, I want to see that. I'd reach out and pick it up, if I was the guy. So yeah, see that? Isn't that great?
Yes, that's beautiful. Mhm.
Oh, she just, and it was so much better than what I thought of. So, and it's one of those things that every time I hand my business card, I have a business card with my name. You want on my email and all the rest, I put that to them and they look at the picture, and it's amazing. She has a talent that I can't overstress, but if he puts you off to her or anybody else, you're gonna be satisfied with her. I know. Even if you never meet her and never know what her voice sounds like. She might be an old man. I don't know. But the work that she does, he does, whatever, is wonderful.
Yeah,
Awesome. And I just have one more question.
sure.
My question. Oh, I'm assuming you're self-published. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's pros and cons to that, and Bruce will go through all of that with you, I'm sure, in your follow-up meetings, and
Okay.
it's good. I also use Sherry Foxley as my cover designer, and I submitted my book a few months ago to the Global eBook Awards, and one of them was to submit your cover, and we won silver medal for the cover and 3 gold medals for the content, so that was pretty exciting.
Wow, congratulations.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. But as Bob said, I kept saying, well, I just want to talk to you for a minute. And no, she doesn't work that way. So it drove me crazy. But the end result was wonderful. And I had a professional photographer take a photo of the landscape up on top of Palomar Mountain. That's on the back of it. And she added to the photo almost like, you know how you'll see religious books and they have the clouds with the light shining through in a particular way. And so she very subtly added that to it because there is some spirituality in the book. It's not a religious book, but it created a peaceful feeling, which is what I wanted. So she altered the photo and it happened. So it's very good.
That's awesome.
And I'm curious, Cynthia, where was your husband from in Nigeria?
He was from Enugu in Nigeria, Anambra State.
Okay, I lived in Kano for 3 years when I was
Oh,
younger.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We'll talk later about all that.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
So,
Thank
so
you,
just to-
Cynthia.
Just to follow up on that, Sherry Foxley I found her when I was writing my book and looking for a book cover, and I got in touch with her and she created my book cover as well and did such a fantastic job that when it came time for Doug and Bob to create their own book covers, I put them in touch with her, and she's very reasonably priced. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
amazing.
for sure.
Oh, amazing.
I don't even want to tell her how reasonably priced she is because she's going to raise her prices or something, but she's very reasonable and just the most wonderful young woman who's very amenable
met her?
to working with authors. It's really good. And she lives in the UK. She's probably not far
Yeah.
from Amber for all we know. And so this is my book cover right here. I don't know
Wow.
if you can see it.
Yeah. Good.
And it's got an
That's so.
aircraft on it. And I worked with her quite a bit about getting the specifics of the aircraft as it appeared in 1978 when I was flying. And she just did an amazing job, and she was prompt and thorough and just a wonderful person to work with. So that's the type of people that that I will put you in touch with to self-publish. There's a content editor who lives in Hawaii. He's an independent content editor, or not content, but copy editor. who lives in Hawaii, and he's a guy that I work with, and he's, again, very reasonable price. And then there's a company that does format editing,
Mhm.
and I work with them as well. And these are discounted prices because I have convinced them that I am a publisher. And because I'm a publisher, I get it for about half the price of what would normally cost if an independent author went to see them. So it all works really well. And we'll talk more about that. I mean, that's kind of down the line. And at our next meeting, the post-retreat meeting, I'll tell you more about the whole revision, editing, and publishing process. Okay?
Sounds good.
Very good.
Excellent. James, talk to us, man.
So I'm mainly going to introduce myself to Bob, seeing as Doug and I are pretty well acquainted.
Are you a
but
son?
No,
you're
just friends.
Okay.
So I'm a former Marine infantryman,
All right.
8 years,
Hoorah.
4 deployments. So my story is basically going to cover, the transition period where I'm going active service to a normal citizen again.
Oh, man.
Dealt with
Okay.
some PTSD from combat deployments, humanitarian missions. But through the recovery process, I realized that there are people out there that need to hear my story, how I overcame it.
Yes.
So got a lot of writing to do on that one. A few 100,000 words already.
Listen, I don't know. I don't know how to say this. I can't put words in your mouth. My son is in the 160th at Fort Campbell. That's Army for those of you who don't know, but it's the same sort of folks. And he has a book called "Making of a Night Stalker," Making of a Night Stalker, How to Make a Night Stalker, that kind of thing, because that's what they're called. And the last third of the book is about just what you said about the transition from being in the Brotherhood to suddenly being out in the civilian world and not having anybody there. And they're still back at base talking about things that are all secret and stuff, and you're not a part of it anymore. And that sudden ousting into the world is so understated and so difficult for young people who haven't ever had anything else since high school, or they went right from their friends to a brotherhood like that, and it seemed like a normal transition. All of a sudden they're thrown into something that they don't understand, which is civilian life. And the transition to civilian life, not just from the military, but to civilian life. There you go.
This is the book he's talking about.
That's the book. How did you know that? How you have that book? You know this Night Stalker?
Just magically ordered it on Amazon, got here in 3 minutes.
You're kidding. The last third, man. The last third of that book is just fantastic. Oh, it's just, and I want to read your book. And if there's anything that you ever want to know about that you think an old Air Force, you might know something. I don't know anything, but I'm really anxious to read that book. Please.
I definitely like to set up a time so that we could actually discuss it, because I spent some time on Air Force bases.
Oh, he doesn't talk to anybody.
Go with the Air Force.
Yeah. I was walking through Port. Oh, no, that's another story. I want to hear your stories.
So James, do you have any questions for either, I know you probably talked to Doug a lot, but do you have any questions that you can address to either or both of them that would benefit you or the group as a whole?
So I was actually thinking about that. Doug and I went for a walk yesterday, and I was thinking of the responses that have helped me the most. And I think I already asked Doug, so I'll ask Bob. Writing about that stuff, it's interesting because you think about the reaction of your family members, the people that know you, who are essentially going to find out a new portion of your life. So, if you could address what that was like for you going through that, writing your book.
Yeah. Well, you're right. A lot of people didn't know that I was doing everything about drugs that there was to do, that I got a girl pregnant and she had an abortion and I lost her because of that. And there were a lot of things that went down in my life that are in that book that a lot of people have read the book now and said, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that about you. Yeah. For me, it's been a broadening experience for them and for me and for our relationships. And it has not been a negative in any case. I say that sort of almost cavalierly, but it really has not been a negative. I've never had anybody come back and say, I never knew that about you and I hate you now. Never has happened that way. And in fact, I was always kind of afraid of letting myself be known and be show all my sort of warts and flaws and things that I always thought to myself, if you only knew what I thought about that, or if you only knew what I went through to get here. And now that they know it, they used to come to me and said things like, I never knew. And then they'll sometimes share a story with me about how they also have these skeletons in their closets. And it's been not only eye-opening, but it's been broadening and a very positive experience for me. Totally unexpected. It's not why I did it, not why I got there, but it's been totally positive for me. And I suggest, I strongly encourage you to let it all go, to let it all get in the book. For me, it was a difficult process because I got a lot of skeletons in my closet. I've done a lot of things, so I've done a lot of skeletons too. And anybody that's been into combat, has those things as well. So, but it's been positive. Let it go, man. Put it in the book. We want to hear it.
Yeah.
We want to know.
Can
I want
I add to that as well?
Yeah.
I met my wife Janice when I was 40. So there was more than half of my life that she didn't participate in. And she read my book after I wrote it and she said, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that about you. Now you tell me. She's really interesting. Yeah. But to echo on what Bob said, as far as just putting it all out there, don't hold anything back. And another friend of mine who's a self-published author, he said when he finished his book, he said it was kind of like standing on a stage naked and exposing yourself to the world because you're really, putting yourself out there. But if you don't share the full story, then it's not as compelling. So, the hardest chapter in my book to write was the time in my life when I went through my divorce and had to tell my kids and separated. And, that was a heart-wrenching story to write, but it made me, and I think it's probably one of the more important stories in the book. Not the most uplifting, but, it is what it is. Yeah. So you got a great story, James.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear it.
So I
I
just want
appreciate
to
that.
emphasize something really real quickly before we move on here. Excellent question, James. And that's something I want to talk about at the post-retreat meeting as well, about different ways that we can approach sensitive subjects and how we can make them honest emotionally and be true to the facts, but also treat them with not a detached, unemotional perspective, but a more retrospective perspective, so that it doesn't come across as accusatory or characterizing people unfairly or anything like that. And I can help with that type of thing. But we'll talk more about that at our meeting a week from now. So
That's called walking the fine line. Bruce is great at it.
So, and both of these guys, both Bob and Doug, had very sensitive issues to talk about, and both of them approached it very courageously and very honestly, and were emotionally honest with themselves. And that's a huge part of what makes their books so special. They just did such a wonderful job doing that, and that's one of the big reasons why I'm so proud of them and why their books have resonated so well with people. And it also gets back to what I talked about at our first meeting. Might have been the second one. I apologize. It was the second one about the big reasons why it's important to become a published author. And two of those reasons are therapy, self-therapy, and that's letting go of things that are holding you back, including things that you might feel shame surrounding them. And then the other one is to be of service. And by telling your story and telling it honestly, this applies to everybody, but by telling your story, telling it honestly, other people will read it and relate to it, and it helps them have the courage to tell their stories as well and get the same benefits that you have from writing your book. So well done. Great question. I'm just going to move on to Kevin right now. Kevin, if you could touch on what you're writing I think you've actually been to retreats with all these guys, so just give us an
Yeah.
update.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, Kevin?
There you go.
You're on mute, buddy.
Fine. It helps
There you
when I unmute. Yeah, I've been working on this book since March, April last year. About a book about no-hit games. I mean, there's guys who've written books where they included every no-hit game from 1893 to the present and did like a page and a half on each game. That book's been written. I'm not writing that book. There's other guys who have done like basically an information please almanac about no-hit games, like how many have been done in April, in September, etc. Very interesting. That book's been done. I'm not doing that book. So what I've been looking at is a lot of extremes and see how often it happens. Like say, there's been 240 no-hit games from 1893 to the present. And there's been 5 times where, like, for lack of a better term, a bad pitcher, I call a level 5 pitcher, threw a no-hitter against a team, the opposite team finished the season 25 games higher than the pitcher who threw the no-hitter.
Oh,
You know, just something really unusual like that. So really good, really bad. I've been throwing it in the mix and come up with different lists and tables. So I've got a lot of information on that. Plus I interviewed like about 17 different players. We tried to interview 40, 50 guys, but we were able to get hold of 17. But each one of the guys that I talked to was a great guy and they got some insight. I mean, I would have liked to get hold of more of the pitchers, but we wound up having 11 catchers and 6 pitchers. And last year I was hoping I could get it done, you know, and now I'm looking at it and going, okay, it's not going to be done in time for Christmas this year. And that's when 40% of all books are sold, like the day after Thanksgiving to Christmas Day. It's okay, so I'm not going to make that deadline, obviously. If I could get it done by next March or something when spring training is going on, I think that would be fantastic if I can do that. And Bruce has been helping me some on this. I've shown him some of the chapters that I've written, some of the games, and he's looked at it. He turns it back to me and I go, man, this is a lot better than what I'm saying. Why don't we work on this together? So anyway, that's kind of what I've been working on.
And
Good luck
you're
with it.
working on it really diligently and you're putting a lot of effort into it. And the individual chapters that we've kind of completed, the couple that we've completed I think are really good. And you have all the information, it's just packaging it. It's just telling the story. So anyway, thank you, Kevin. Thanks for being here. I'm just going to ask any last questions or last comments from Doug or Bob. And then I'd like to wrap up with the authors right after that, because we're coming up against the end of the retreat. But Doug or Bob, any last questions or comments?
I got one more thing, Bruce.
Yeah.
You got this information for them?
About your
Let's see.
book?
No, about my email address and how to get a hold of me if they want to talk.
I will get that. I'll get that.
Okay.
to you. Sure, you bet.
Kevin, I would be interested in reading a couple of your chapters. I'm a big baseball fan, not a Giants fan, unfortunately. But Bruce doesn't hold that against me. But I'd love to read them.
Oh,
Okay. You
I'll
got an
put
email
you guys
address?
in touch.
Okay.
I'll put you
That'd be
guys in
great.
touch.
Love to
That's
send
great.
you one. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. And to Doug and Bob, thank you so much for being here. You guys are invaluable, and it's always great to talk with you. I really enjoy you both a lot. And you've done such an amazing job, and you are inspiring examples for all of us, me included, me especially. So thank you for
My
being
pleasure.
here, and we'll
My
talk
pleasure.
again soon, guys, okay?
Thank
Good
you
luck,
for
everybody.
taking time to talk to us.
Our pleasure.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you guys
Bye.
later.